I'll call the meeting to order. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? All right. Approve the minutes of Tuesday, November 18th. Do I have a motion?
Seconded.
Motion, Bill.
Second.
No, I needed you to give the
Move
motion. All right. All right, is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none. We approve the minutes of November 18th. Board correspondence. So, public comments. I don't think we have any public on. All right, Jamie, to you. It makes me guilty if you sit next to me. I get to nudge. So you sit next to me. I get to nudge you do things. You're the only one here I can nudge tonight, so we're all.
So Tara will be walking us through the SU budget tonight, and she's updated assessment numbers based on from last month to this month, based on average daily membership, and she'll be able to walk you through that tonight. She also sent you fiscal audits for review. You can either take action on that tonight or next month. I also wanted to highlight for folks that Annette put a presentation in your packet that she'll be reviewing tonight in regards to how we've tried to expand some of our intensive programming to support not only students who have social, emotional, and behavioral needs, but also in regards to greater learner profiles in regards to more intensive cognitive disabilities. And she'll be able to speak more to that as well this evening. And then also, I will get more information out to all of you. The RUD board got an invitation tonight, the White River Unified District Board. But if there's other SU board members that are interested in joining us on the week of January 13th, we are having our inaugural kickoff at the high school in regards to senior capstone projects. And so if board members are interested, just send me an email. It's during the school day during that week, afternoons, and then there's one morning session on Friday. But if you just let me know, I can get you more specifics around times and get that out to other board members. Eventually, we're going to have this be a greater celebration with the entire community. It's the first year. It was really, kind of our pilot year. So we wanted to have some public in, but not get our kids too nervous before they've had a model to see and observe. So, our juniors are going to be part of that process this year and sit on panels and see presentations. So they'll be a little more prepped. We're trying to walk before we run.
Sounds exciting.
But that's exciting. I had 2 community conversations, coffee and conversations last week. I was in Rochester at the cafe on Monday morning with Principal Stetson, and then joined Principal Williams on Thursday at the Coburn's General Store in Stratford, which was great. And that resulted in me being able to see folks from Sharon, Royalton, Stratford. I had a Hancock folks, Rochester, and one Stockbridge. So that was great to be able to be connected with all those different communities within the SU during those 2 coffees. I wanted to highlight that we are going to be having a WRVSU-wide newsletter that will be going out in the mail, and folks will be receiving paper copies in all of our residents' mailboxes in January. Prior to our budget materials going out, we wanted to be able to share with the public in regards to the happenings occurring across all of our schools and some of the celebrations occurring across the SU, so that they would get that flavor in January. And then, of course, they'll be receiving our mailers, where we also try to celebrate and talk about what the budget's been supporting in February. But just know that newsletter is going to be going out to everybody. One of the reasons you haven't seen local district budget tax sheets is that when we received estimated long-term weighted average daily membership from the AOE about 2 weeks ago, that data didn't make any sense based on what we knew we were submitting for average daily membership and what the weights came out for last year. So it's why we didn't run tax sheets for you, because it would have been way more promising than what we expected the long-term weighted average daily memberships to actually be. They were inflating quite a bit. And so just know that we expect that we're going to be getting better data here in the very near future, and then we'll be able to run data sheets for you around that. Just know that the statewide CLA estimate in regards to taking into account for some of our towns that had significant drops in the CLA, we do anticipate that you're going to see most of you CLAs actually increase from what you saw last year now due to this statewide average common level of appraisal that they're using. So again, we have estimates around that. We usually in early January we get the official CLAs, and they'll take that statewide adjustment into effect and account in early January. But based on the data we're getting, and Tara met with the tax department last week, those estimates seem to be accurate. We're not getting indication that data is actually off. And so do know that for a majority of you, you will see a bump in CLAs this year when we run your tax sheets. So that's good news. And then finally, I just wanted to highlight that we are holding our community conversation on public and school safety in Royalton. I wanted to have this conversation in light of when there was some concerns on social media around a weapon threat that occurred at the White River Valley High School earlier this school year. I was working in conjunction with Royalton PD and the Windsor County Sheriff's Office to hold that conversation. We weren't able to have it last week due to the weather, but we have a new date of January 8th where we will be holding that conversation and getting that information out to our families.
At the high school?
That's at the Royalton campus. Yep.
Nice.
And what are the hours again?
What's that?
When?
January 8th.
No, the time of the
It was
day.
like 10.
5:30 for dinner,
Okay.
and then the conversation will start at 6.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And I'll entertain any question folks may have.
Any questions for Jamie?
I have one on the tax, what do you want to call it? The Director of Taxation, whatever it is, Department of Taxation, came up with a December 1st letter as required. In that letter, he provides a yield both for a yield for property taxes based on property valuation and also based on income. And the yield for property taxes went down quite a lot, and that really is going to impact, it's going to inflate our tax impact on our residents. And I'm wondering, that's not the final one at all, but do you have any sense, I can't recall, do those things bounce all over the place, or we expect something to be relatively close, or is it really up to the legislature at the end when somebody
No,
keeps
it's really up to
twisting
the
the arms?
legislature at the end, and they'll use approved budgets to figure it out. So the way that yield number is estimated right now is they've collected all of our preliminary budget data at the state level in regards to be able to project out that yield number. And so, in all actuality, that I actually saw that as favorable compared to what they did last year. They dropped that yield number a lot more originally, even last year. And then you remember it dropped lower. Mm-hmm. When they talk about things like on average, taxes are going to go up 5.8%, they do that based on the budgets they've collected and how much they've dropped the yield. So that's how they get that statewide tax impact. Essentially what they're saying is that yield number is going to contribute 5.8% increase in taxes in general. Every district, the yield plays a little bit different number based on how big your budget is and in regards to what a penny is on your tax rate. But for most districts, that yield last year did contribute, about 10% of the overall tax increase, which that yield's the only way they can fund the statewide ed fund. And so I expect that number to continue to adjust a little bit based on where budgets end up. if folks continue to tighten their belts between now and when we adopt budgets, meaning across the state, that yield number could go up. If budgets seem to be being approved at higher rates than what folks projected in late fall, then that number could go down.
Andrew.
Thank you.
Andrew? You're muted, Andrew.
Yeah, sorry. It is worth noting that that yield that they released for property taxes, they changed the CLA calculation so it takes out the state average, and that's being reflected in the yield too. So, if you look at the income yield, that doesn't involve the CLA, and it went up, significantly, like 20% or something. It went up a fair amount. So if you take out the state average of the CLAs, our CLAs are all going to be going up, which is good for taxes. The yield is going down to kind of counteract that because of the new CLA calculation.
Yeah, I would say in general, that December 1st tax letter was way more positive
Yeah.
than what any news we've received from them in the last 12 months.
Yeah, the other thing, like looking at the numbers, they talk about a 5% increase in the taxes or whatever, but probably 3% of that is due to the one-time money that they used last year. So, it makes it sound really unsustainable, but if you look at the actual underlying numbers, it's not as dire.
All right. Anything else for Jamie, guys? All right.
I appreciate that, Andrew. I mean, my sense is I don't have a good enough read on all of it yet, is that they're anticipating possibly some more surplus funds from this coming year than what they originally had forecasted.
Yeah.
So the board following that, I think they're projecting that they have brought in more revenue into the ed fund for this current fiscal year than they possibly needed to. Meaning that they could have dropped that yield number more than they needed to this past year. And so they've generated more revenue for this current budget year, meaning FY25, and that they're anticipating that they may be able to offset some of that one-time money used in things by possibly having surplus funds. They have not stated that publicly, but it was a fairly positive tax letter compared to what forecasting we had seen previously. So it's positive for some reason.
All right. All right. We're on to you, Anta.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. So I use the report for December as an opportunity to start the education around the new and the revised education quality standards. So I just took the first, if you had a chance to read it, I took the first goal that we have across the SU and the individual sort of components of that goal, and then pulled out the parts of the revised EQS that align to that part of the goal. There'll be, that will happen for the other two goals that, I report on monthly, and then probably sort of a catch-all for anything. We can also come back to some of this as a reference document. I know we have this on the board development calendar especially for new folks coming in, but it was going to be a lot to get through in one day. So I figured we'll just, as long as this month was, relatively slower with other information, I figured I'd use it now because we'll be busy with some other stuff in the beginning of the new year. So really focused here on where are the changes with regards to the comprehensive system of support and personalized learning plans. And the big thread here is really thinking about equity and the role that plays in the education quality standards, both making sure that our content areas really think about what kinds of content our students are exposed to with respect to sort of all the different demographic groups, making sure it's kind of equitable, anti-racist, culturally responsive, anti-discriminatory. So there's some work around that. The personalized learning plans kind of moves from a plan, as it was referred to, into a process, and really thinking about that much more, like we're not just getting to a plan, but sort of what is that collaborative process with students, families, and educators to determine how to make learning sort of personalized for each student. And then the last part, the kind of the flexible pathways, I included the most text around there on the second page about making sure that those flexible pathways are really thinking about addressing the diversity of our students in the in our state and particularly in RSU, and how to make flexible pathways work for all of those students. So there's a lot of language there. My sort of summary at the end is, in general, we're in really good shape on a lot of these already. So some of this is just thinking about how do we highlight the places where we are already really doing a lot of these pieces well. Where do we have some gaps given the revised standards that we want to work towards meeting those? And is there anything that that we look like we're totally absent on? I don't think that's true. So I think we're in good shape with some work to be done that feels pretty manageable at this point. Any questions?
I had a question that has to do with that initiative by the state under Act 1, the working group.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we're talking about organizational culture. And my feeling is that we've got that culture of anti-discrimination, anti-racist, and in a positive way. It's not only we should not, but we do certain things, but it makes sense, and we believe in doing things that is all-inclusive and all of that sort of stuff. So that's my sense. And so if that's true, and I'm a pretty positive thinker, then is this basically kind of doing it in more, what's the term, documentation of that culture, so that we make sure that we meet, because they talk about an annual review and everything else, or is it both that we've got to think a little bit more focused on this and then do the documentation? I don't know if that makes sense to you, but part of it is I've been in organizations where this could be a big cultural thing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just they don't understand, they don't believe in it, they don't want to do it. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. But I'm trying to get a sense of where we are versus state expectations for documentation and evaluation of our job.
I think, particularly with regards to Act 1, it's really thinking about, so there is I think the framework is the best word for looking at making sure that what is being taught in the classrooms comes at it from a diversity of perspectives. Yep. So I think in general, like in some places we have done that really well. In some places we may not have updated all of the ways in which we're teaching certain content, what kind of examples we have. You'll see things that look like that feels a little dated, right? Like that's not actually looking at sort of the the diversity of experiences and backgrounds that our students are coming in with. So those are the kinds of updates that we want to be looking at, and I think documenting. And I think even just coming in with new being able to redo all of our proficiencies, and those are supported by new instructional programs. I think a lot of that has gotten updated in the last couple of years in terms of what we are using in the classroom. You go into some of our classrooms and you just see things that look much more like the world around us, and not something just from decades past, while still holding on to that really rich history of the state. So I think it's trying to do that. I think in terms of the culture, I think that shows up more in some other parts of the standards, not as much necessarily in the in the curriculum aspects referenced here. Mm-hmm. But I think we'll get to sort of how we're documenting some of that more as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. That's heartening.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else for Rhonda? All right, thank you, Rhonda.
You're welcome.
All right.
You are up.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to jump right into my presentation. So what I'm going to talk about, actually, it's nice that Anda was, talking about all those different aspects, right, of ways that we enrich the learning experience of our students, because it actually leads right into some of the work that I'm going to talk to you all about. So it's great. It's a nice connection. So what I want to talk to you all a little bit about is just kind of what our alternative programming looks like right now and how it's expanded. And so the next slide, Ray, just kind of is a reminder of kind of what our MTSS, our multi-tiered system of support foundations are, and also how those foundations relate to what we now have as our portrait of a learner. Right? When we think about our portrait of a learner, that's all of our learners. And so that's even our learners with like global disabilities. And so this is what I look at and what the team looks at.
I mean, I guess I can.
I don't think he knows he's unmuted.
No. When we're looking at programming for students, so we want to make sure that we're including all of our students and thinking about all of our students and how they, meet, right, the portrait of a learner and what our foundation concepts are. So the next slide, Ray, just talks about, this is formally kind of what our definition was of the alternative programming. It was an alternative setting that really just focused on social emotional learning. Students that had difficult, possibly behaviors to manage. And at the elementary level, it was for students in grades 2 through 5, in middle school 6 through 8, and then the high school. And really that's just what it focused on, was those students, especially at the elementary and middle school levels, were in a classroom, just in their own space, with a special educator and then a Clara Martin staff and a couple of paraeducators. And their experiences outside of those classrooms were very minimal. So they were kind of on their own, doing their own programming. So that's what it formally used to look like. The next slide is now kind of what the new kind of concept is. So they are personalized learning centers now that offers opportunity for individual and small group instruction for students with developmental disabilities, but also social emotional disabilities. So we're kind of opened up the door to then be able to service more children. And so what it looks like now is we have some help on teaching the social emotional side through Clara Martin and their expertise, as well as other staff that's in the building that focuses on social emotional and self-regulation. But we also have people with expertise in developmental disabilities, really focusing on those life skills and those functional skills to kind of help them all adapt to be really high-functioning learners and community members. So right now the classroom, instead of it being a single classroom with all students in it all the time, at the elementary level and at the middle school level, it's kind of broken up into like 2 separate zones, which is part of that picture. So one zone is where social emotional learning happens, and the other zone is kind of where, as you can see in the picture, like there's some developmental learning happening, right? They're using picture communication, they're using augmentative communication, so kind of like talking devices. And so it's really enriching the learning experience for more students. And what they learn in these 2 spaces, they can practice there, they learn there, and then they have the opportunity to go and practice and use those skills with their non-disabled peers. They're not in a classroom separated to learn those skills. They now get to learn those skills and then go and practice those skills in an environment with all of their peers. And so they're learning how to be students in a classroom instead of kind of in their own space that might have different rules or a different set of expectations.
So how does that work if they're not necessarily like a South Royalton student?
Yeah.
They're there, or a Bethel, how does it work?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
all the different campuses.
They do. There are still a few students that come, and there are still a few students who come that have developmental disabilities. I've worked with a transportation company, and we have set activities where they get to come and be with peers that look or function or use equipment like they do. Because some of our other schools, they may be only one student in a wheelchair, or they may be only one student using an augmentative device. And so now they get to go to a place where there's many other students that uses the same talking, equipment, right? Or the same wheelchair, and they get to see people that look like them and that function like them, and then be able to use their devices and things to talk to each other. Social emotional things, yes, we do have kiddos that can still come and get those skills and things. At this point, we don't have the need for just in a social emotional classroom just isn't there right now because of the wonderful supports, yes, that we have in our buildings as part of our social emotional learning. We're seeing those numbers decrease, which I'll talk about here in another slide. You've got me going right in the right order. No, Kathy, you're good. So we can go to the next slide. Actually, we'll give you the data. So the formal model, right at the elementary level, I gave you of the number of what the student count looked like. So 9 students, 7 students, and then last year at the elementary level, there were 8 students to start the year, but by June, there was 2 students in the classroom. So we were running a classroom with a special educator, a Claire Martin staff, and 2 paraeducators for 2 students by the end of the year. And then we had lots of other students who weren't getting, in my opinion, real enriched, right, high quality instruction that were kind of like waiting to have their turn. And I just thought, how can we open this up so that we can then help support more students? Because we have the resources, and so how can we just branch it out to incorporate more? And at the middle school, again, by the end of last year, we had 5. The new model, right, is only taking up 2.5 staff. When you include the middle school, there's a half-time person at the middle school. So it's 14 students approximately that are getting supported through this new model at the elementary school. There is the resource of, there are some kiddos that come in on a part-time basis, which is about 7 more students. So there's 21 elementary students who's now being supported and getting this like enriched, enhanced education at the elementary level. And at the middle school level, it's approximately about 10 students. The next slide. I also wanted to kind of update you on the high school. So the high school Personalized Learning Center pretty much looks and functions the same as it always has. However, we've now have this addition of 2 courses. It's called Transitional Math and Language Live. And these 2 courses are actual additions to the course of study at the high school. So they are specialized classes, specialized courses that students can take as part of their plan and receive credit, high school credit, a math credit and an English credit for taking them. The next slide. Just a little bit more about the high school data. So from the first year that it started till now, it's increased by 10 plus students. There's about 25 plus students, full-time or part-time, that actually access the Personalized Learning Center at the high school. Whether it's one course, they're there half a day, they use it as a supported study. It's really kind of opened up to incorporate many more students in many more different ways. And also, the Personalized Learning Classroom, if you go to the next slide, has been working really closely with the Flexible Pathways Coordinator, but also your community-based learning teacher at the high school. There's a lot of collaboration going on with each other to really wrap around students. So they might, like I say, do some part-time within the Personalized Learning Classroom, but then have an internship or a job with the community-based learning teacher. They might come in and take a social connections class right, that transitional math and language live. And then they may go again and do an internship, or they then do a flexible pathways with a flexible pathways teacher on this other interest of some sort of history or science that they're really into, and are able to get their high school credits that way. But these are just some of the things that they've been working on just this year. They've been helping students study, for their driver's permits. This year there's a student who, as a high school student, is trying to pass his test to go into the Vermont National Guard. And he's been going on the weekends down with his recruiter to kind of to learn and know what like his basic boot camp is going to look like. He's done some practice tests. So they're helping him practice for this assessment that he needs to take. The recruiter's given them the study guide, so they're reading it together. They're doing the practice tests together. So they're teaching him how to test take. And that's a student who's a junior. They're helping some kiddos who come in to do the high school completion program. They're doing a lot of tutoring with that. Like I said, they're collaborating with a community-based learning teacher for internships, jobs, and even volunteering. They're doing a lot of volunteering in the community. Like I said, they've been working with the flexible pathways teacher, but also the school counselor around VTVLC, but other learning opportunities as well. So a lot of hands-on projects going on. They teach sections of transitional math, language live, and there's a social connections, which is like social emotional learning that happens first block for students who need that little extra support around social skills and how to navigate the social world that we live in. They do some co-teaching and support in their regular ed classes. They are in biology. They are in U.S. history classes. They're in the physics class, helping students as well. But they also work with outside agencies, your higher ability and many other HCRS, Claire Martin, to kind of do all that wraparound to get students prepared and families prepared for life after high school. So a lot of those agencies come in and do some work with families and students as well. So we have a lot going on for our students, and all we've tried to do is just expand the door and expand what's available for students, and actually open the doors for more students to come and meet each other from other schools as well.
So we kind of changed the program, but it just felt like students were coming before, but it sounds like.
Yeah, the need for
So, like,
social
FLED is
emotionally,
not-
right. Yeah, the need social emotionally to have students come and be in a separate classroom all day just isn't there as it was before.
Okay.
That's the
Still an
only,
option.
It's
but
still an option.
We
Yep,
wanted to take our resources and spread it. Not say it's the only thing we can do.
exactly. Yes, because we have to think about both, as Jamie said, like both learner profiles. We can't just say all students, you're all in this classroom, or because you have some social emotional difficulties or challenges, then you're going to be in this classroom. We had that other set of learners, that other set of, kind of global disabilities that we also needed to focus on. And financially, this was the best way to do it, was because we have the resources for both. And so we are able to kind of split it in half like this. So, yeah.
Okay.
I just thought, yes, and
It was the start of the year was a bit challenging because Claire Martin was down some staff.
and they
but
were
now
down
that they've
staff. Yeah,
Become fully staffed. I feel like
yeah.
we've gained a lot of traction in the last 6 weeks with it.
It's been amazing. It's
Nice.
been amazing. Yes.
And
And
our out in placement students that number's still down, or we?
it's still down. We've had some students move in that have not been out. It's out of our control.
Right, they were already, yeah.
That was their programming, and so they stayed in that programming. So it's increased a little bit, but not from us sending kiddos places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions, guys?
What are defined wraparound families?
Yeah, so we get to wrap around the families. So we get to offer them family support, in-home support through our mental health agencies, and
Okay, so it's
also
the whole-
it's wrapping right around the family and giving everyone in the families the support that they need to be successful and to help their students become successful
I love
after high
that.
school. Yeah, there's a lot that happens for our students to prepare for after high school, especially if they have developmental disabilities. There's a lot of supports out there that a lot of people don't know about.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we want to make sure that we get that information out to them and help them prepare. So, and that generally starts their freshman, sophomore years. So for some students, it's even even 7th and 8th grade, you start preparing. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, guys. Any questions for Annette before we go to next? Oh, all right. Thank you, Annette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, so I think we are up to.
So you have my report. It outlines all of the reports that are due during the month of January. It's a busy reporting month for both state and the feds because it's the close of quarter two. So all of our quarter two reports are due into them, as well as the quarterlies for payroll and all of those wonderful things. In addition to that, all of those reports that are due in January will be in Budget World and getting geared up for mailers and getting ready for town meetings. And then the rest of my stuff is discussion items.
All right. And any questions for Tara? Sure you'll get plenty of questions later. All right.
Okay, thanks. I bring up my board report, which is almost entirely, I think, I remember about enrollment projections. There was a hiccup with the service we get from NESDEC, which provides enrollment projections, last spring. And it has to do with the definition of how they define private enrollment versus how we in Vermont have private enrollment. And those projections were held because of that problem. And to be honest, I just never got around to figuring it out. And so they got shared recently before the next set goes in to NESDEC for workup. It basically, when I went to them at that time, let's say December or January of last year, I said, there's something about the form that's changed. And they said, oh, don't worry, just do it the same. But it didn't work out. So, for example, their definition of a private student means a parent privately paying tuition for their kid to go to their school of choice. For us, private, independent, relates to schools like KUA, Thetford Academy, the Sharon Academy. And so, I think we've got that settled for good this third time, and hope to have the next set of projections for next month. Separate from that, but related, is this additional report about ADM, average daily membership, and how that relates to long-term weighted average, which used to be equalized pupils. So I'm going to scroll through this and talk briefly about what ADM means, and then invite questions from online and here in the room. So ADM, average daily membership, those are our students, whether they're in our schools or in schools outside the SU, but there are resident students, as opposed to students who tuition in from the outside. We do not get ADM for kids who come in from Pittsfield. We get tuition for those kids. So this report talks about the window, which runs basically, let's call it the third week of September through the third week of October. That's not exactly right, but the details are in the report. And so unless a student is enrolled in one of our schools, during that window of 20 days, their enrollment doesn't count for ADM points. So here's the next bit of confusion, or no, wrong term. Next thing I want to specify is there's a difference between literally the rows, the number of rows in the spreadsheet that I get from the state, the count, which is, students that are unduplicated, each kid, and then points, how much ADM we get for them. And so here's a chart that will show what I'm thinking people are most interested in is this is where we're at this year, and this is where we were at last year. And over time, when you go to the right, the data is older. So this year, our points are down from 1670 to 1648, although our count is up. And up a fair amount, actually. And you might ask, well, what's the reason for that? And we have almost 70 kids, 69, who left us before ADM started, joined us after the ADM window ended, or they are state-placed kids we don't get ADM for, or guest students, most likely a foreign exchange student, who we do not get ADM for. So here's a chart showing that same information again. To the right is the oldest, to the left is the newest, and then ADM average daily membership is the feedstock for what used to be equalized pupil, now is long-term weighted average, and I'm sad to hear that those numbers that I saw in the provisional LTW were not real. Okay.
Sad to all of us.
Yeah, they were sweet looking, to be honest.
Fabulous.
With that said, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Right. Questions for Ray?
Yeah, Ray, it's Michael. Are we in worse shape than last year?
Well, what's your definition of worse shape?
Well, I'm hearing that you were hopeful and it didn't pan out because the numbers were wrong. So I'm just, where does that leave us?
We don't know yet, Michael.
Yeah, sorry. I spoke prematurely, right? I deal with ADM, which leads to LTW, formerly equalized pupils. But I don't actually get those reports directly, and I should have held my comments. We don't know yet what the outcome of the weightings will be.
When?
When will we know? The first draft is out. A couple weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hope was we were gonna have them on Friday, and it's Monday, and I haven't seen them yet.
Good question for the agency. That's my answer.
Yeah. They're really having trouble with their data consistently across the board, it seems.
Sorry. Did I laugh out loud? Remember that letter's called the December 1st letter, right, about other things. But ADM is supposed to be settled before the start of December. Right? The window ends the third week of October, and then there's some time to do some adjustments. Just as an example, in a case where we reported a kid, because last year they were going to Thetford Academy, but this year they're now going to Randolph. There might be a dispute between what we're reporting and what Randolph is reporting. And so that resubmission window gives us time to clear that up. But it also takes the state time to do their work on their end. So.
All right. Thank you, Ray.
Points, we want higher points, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the count is kids in our system. They might have come here later, but we're educating them, taking care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the benefit we get in the state system is points, and you just described how we
Yep.
how we do that.
Under all circumstances, we would want the count to be as high as possible and the points to be as high as possible. If you're looking at the chart closely, you'll notice that the spread this year between count and points is wider than in years past. And again, when I looked at that in detail, sorry, I'm trying to scroll back up to get to it. It seems to almost entirely be that students left us before ADM started or joined us afterwards. We've had 29 kids enroll after the end of the window. So, we always want to enroll kids.
Yes. I wanted to draw everybody's attention to the line or the row on this exhibit that you just showed us with all the numbers per year by district.
Mm-hmm.
If you could show that again.
Yeah.
If you are showing that, and go down to the second to last or the third to the last thing, the number of students at White River Valley Supervisory Union schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got 1337 this year. Now let's go to the right.
Mm-hmm.
That's more than last year.
Yep.
That's more than the year before. That's
Mm-hmm.
more than 3 years before, and it takes us all the way back to
16, 17.
school year 17,
Yep.
where we actually had more students. What I see is a very positive trend of kids that we're helping to educate. And it bounces around a little bit, but the trend is certainly there, and I like to think it's based on the quality of education we're doing and the ability to communicate the quality of education to our parents and meeting their needs and the needs of their students. And I think that's certainly a trend we want to continue for a number of reasons. One thing I wanted to ask Ray or Jamie is when we have the breakouts by school, like Bethel this year, 270, that's the total number of kids we're responsible for, whether they're attending Bethel or going to a choice school.
Rudd doesn't have choice,
Yeah.
but yes, it's it's by town, not by school in this case.
Yeah.
So the town of Bethel, the town of Chelsea, Granville and Hancock, right? And they're literally laid out in the order that the state has them. The lower numbers are at the top. Bethel and Chelsea are low numbers, and the highest at the top being Tunbridge, 210. And so
Town 210.
town 210.
What I was trying to get a sense of, like
Mhm.
Rochester,
Yep.
Stockbridge.
Regardless of where the student is enrolled and where they attend,
Yeah.
that
Somehow I'd
270
like to be able
is
to track
Mhm.
for each of our schools, how many kids after they graduate and are going into a choice situation we get to keep. Keeping is they stay within our SU, and those that
Yep.
to their parents determine that there's a better choice for their kids outside of our system, and try to see, because one of our goals is financially as well as educationally, is to have as many, a higher percentage of kids staying with us.
Yep.
But I'm looking at here, and it's hard for me to see that, because by town, that
Mhm.
isn't broken out. So I'm just wondering whether, when you're doing our individual budgets, is that where it's broken out? But I think that we want to see that trend again, that a higher percentage of our kids that have choice stay with our SU. And I can see down the total for the SU
Mhm.
we're building, though it's not going as fast as the kids' choice outside the SU, but I think that would be helpful information at some point to see and evaluate how well we're doing to recruit and retain kids.
So,
And I'm doing this through Jamie. I'm not, whether that's available and is something that you could pull out at some time, or the system can pull out some time. In Rochester, we're getting more kids going to Bethel Middle School
Mhm.
than Middlebury. Middlebury used to be the school of choice. And so that would be nice to be able to measure, not necessarily Middlebury, but just choice versus staying with us.
Mhm.
We probably have the historical data in all of our town reports because it says how many kids go. So we probably have
They probably do.
all the historical
Yeah, because when
data.
I break out your secondary tuition budgets, I'm breaking it out based on where your kids are going.
Yep.
So it would be a matter of just pulling each of the sending districts, totaling up the kids and doing a percentage check.
Yeah, so we can. It's probably attainable data.
Huh?
It's probably attainable data.
Yeah, and I don't, everybody in this room is extremely busy, so, I don't wanna pull you away from anything, but
I mean, the percentages are already there across the whole SU.
we got the SU there, but I'm saying, how well is the RSUD that I'm responsible for?
Yeah,
How are we
you
doing?
want, yeah, you want it broken down by district.
Yeah.
I would say the goal is about keeping more kids in the SU.
Yes.
So
Yes. That's what I'm saying, that's a positive.
that data is literally that bottom number,
Yeah.
right? Like you can get the percentage there, right? Of how many are SU. We just didn't add the percentages, but that 394 plus that
Oh, I've got the
1337
Yeah.
is each percentage.
All right.
Yeah, so I'll let go, thanks.
All right, guys. Anything else before we move on to policy committee? You have policies C5, C6, C7 for a second reading, and you have C8 for a first reading. So none of these are on to approve tonight, but they're all on for a first or second reading. Does anybody have any questions? Have you had an opportunity to look at the policies? There before we move on to the next thing?
Under student attendance, I just need to, the statute citations are there, but I didn't link which statutes. Anyways, essentially I need to take input number 1 in front of 16 VSA. I will fix that. It's clerical in the footnotes on student attendance, but that's the only feedback we've received from district boards thus far.
All right. Any comments or questions on policies before we move on? Okay.
So these are revisions, so they will be warned for action
January.
in January. Yeah.
So you guys hear that? So take a look. If you want to make any changes, they're going to be warned for action at our January full board meeting.
Could I just ask a quick question, Kathy?
Sure.
Michael. The folks on the policy committee, is there any language in any of these that they would like to draw our attention to that they think might be of concern to any members of our community?
Eric, I don't.
Not in these policies.
No.
Yeah, not in these policies. These are sort of all policies that are sort of, we've had for forever and that we need to have in order to, have the orderly conducting of business. We've reviewed the policies. The changes that we have made are not significant. So no, not in these policies.
I didn't see that, but that's helpful to hear, Eric. Thank you very much.
All right. Superintendent Evaluation Committee update. The process went through. We had 19 board members fill out the surveys, so everybody can know how I feel about that. Shouldn't have to say it. We should have had 29, right? We have 29 board members now.
30.
We have
One.
31 board members, so we were over half, but we'll talk more about that.
Yeah. So about that, Kathy, because I didn't see I filled it out, but I never got that I'd done it. You know what I mean? Is there a way that maybe you could just send me a message if I did do it? Well, there wasn't any confirmation or anything that.
And I'll talk with the VSBA, but it's an anonymous survey, so there's no way to know.
Yeah. Okay.
But maybe that would be good
Feedback for that.
good feedback for everybody. So maybe I can I'll find out a little more from her if there's a way to track it more. There was a suggestion with talking to somebody, maybe we, at least say 4 board members from FBA did it, or just to kind of figure it out. But yes, thank you for that.
Thank you.
The goal would be to get 31 board members to fill it out. That would be awesome. It's our single most important job as a board member. And it's great feedback for Jamie, and helpful for him in doing his work. So I want to get better on that number. All right, and we're up to discussion items. Tara,
Me.
fiscal audit, possible
So-
action.
I sent you at like 3:30ish, I think it was, the revised audit that I got this afternoon from the auditors, which I had identified to you yesterday what were pending changes. So as I have done for those of you who have already seen your audits at the individual district levels, we have had some funds on our books dating back to 2008 that have been carrying a negative fund balance. So we have been slowly working through them, figuring them out, and getting rid of them. And the way we get rid of them is we transfer the funds from the general fund to those special revenue funds, zero amount, close amount. Because they are funds that are no longer active, or funds that there is no additional revenue that's coming in, and just it was more expenditures coded than should have been. So on the SU audit, the last two funds that remain that we didn't clean up is our child nutrition fund. And the reason for that is, as you all may recall, when we brought child nutrition at the supervisory union level, the assessments that we put into your budget are based on the prior year deficit of the child nutrition program. So FY 23 is budgeted for in FY 25. And FY 24 is going to be what's in your budget for FY 26. So we only transferred enough to clean up what was left from FY 22. So there's the balance left in food service is for 23 and 24, which will then keep continuously coming each year. And then ESSER 3 had a very small fund balance in it, and ESSER 3 is not closed out yet. We are still gaining expenses on two projects that we requested and were approved for liquidation for our building projects. So that'll get closed up at the end of this month, and then that whole fund will be reconciled. So that just sits because it's still an open and active grant. And so that's on page 45 of the audit. So all that being said, what does that mean? So on page 12, we have the balance sheet of your governmental funds. Non-spendable is $4,909. That's our prepaid expenses, so they're already allocated for. Unassigned fund surplus for the supervisory union is $1,303,338, bringing us to a total fund balance of $1,308,247. Page 14 is our statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. General fund balance at the beginning of the year was $510,488. We had a surplus in the general fund for fiscal year 24 of $941,153, and that's what brings us to the fund balance on June 30th of that $1,308,247. And then page 47 is your budget to actual comparison, so you can see where we were up and down as far as individual budgeted expenditures. So on the SU, similar to those individual districts, this is the financial statement audit. The SU receives more than $750,000 in federal funds, so we are still subject to the single audit, which Sam and her team are hoping to get wrapped up this week for all of the individual entities. She's working on single audits, and RUD's getting their final draft done today. That was what she and I were working on throughout most of the day today. So I'm happy to meet with anybody who would love to go through the audit if you have questions.
Audit questions, guys? Would you like us to accept the audit?
So you can accept the financial statements, and then I will come back and ask you to accept the single audit when it's done, or you can choose to wait. It's whatever your pleasure is.
What's our pleasure? Do we want to accept the financial statements of the audit?
I shall move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, so the audit is, financial statement of the audit is passed.
Thank you all. So your fiscal year 26 budget, we have not made any changes to the expenditure or the revenue budget from the last draft that you saw. What has changed based on getting our preliminary average daily membership numbers and our enrollment numbers is I have now been able to actually update your assessment percentages. So I'm going to start with central office because that's just the way my brain works. So Ray, that page should be called central office member assessment right there. Yep. For those who don't have their books in front of them.
This page.
So you can see there's been some shift in each of the individual percentages. So overall, right up in that top right corner is your fiscal year 26 assessments with regard to central office budget. So for all of you who have already seen your budget, other than Rudd, the next draft will be updated based on these percentages. Rudd, when you see your full draft tomorrow night, your percentages have already been updated based on these calculations. And then special education, same thing there. Those updates have been done. Bottom right corner gives you the assessment amount broken down to your monthly payments. And then top left corner is also the summary comparison to the right of 26 to 25. Percentage change and dollar change.
Question?
Yeah, Tara, remind us again how the assessment is calculated.
For central office, I just gotta get into it. I don't misspeak.
Is it on ADM or?
So
There are two
it
different
is, yep,
calculations,
two
that's
different calculations. Sorry, I'm just trying to find
It is based off ADM, but
Yeah. I just gotta open the right file so I can tell you exactly which one's which. So special education is based on your average daily membership. And the central office assessment is based on the average of your average daily membership and your enrollment as of 10/1. And that central office assessment percentage is also used for your child nutrition assessment percentages. It's the same formula that we use for that as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, guys, that you got so far? Nothing so far.
so I mean the budgets put forth are based off of November because we talked about if we wanted to make reductions that special ed. Just a reminder for some board members who haven't followed along. Special ed's budget does that is the equivalent of an FTE reduction of the behavioral specialist position that we had added this past year. We struggled to find a qualified individual to be in that position, so we're just going with contracted service. So we bumped up the contracted service line. It's also a reduction in some special ed paraprofessionals, of having some less need in that regard. So it ended up being the equivalent of a reduction of 5 FTE, okay, overall in special ed, even though it's still up. So I wanted to make certain folks
Yeah, that's
understood that.
important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And the central office budget is staffing status quo.
Any questions, discussion on the budget? You want us to approve the budget tonight?
Well, that would allow us to have those solidified numbers for all your districts. If you're not ready tonight, I'd ask we get direction and we have a special meeting in early January to solidify this. And my reason for that is I don't want districts approving budgets in the event that this was to change. I'd like to have those numbers secure your assessments.
Yep. Andrew?
So our district budgets, at least our district budget, I shouldn't say budgets because I'm not sure what's going on with everybody else's, but are basically staffing status quo, and we're seeing, 6% increase. And this is a 10% increase. So what's the difference primarily there?
Our budget's much smaller than the district budgets.
Tara's answer was our budget's just smaller.
I mean,
So health insurance is increasing it more.
so a $200,000 increase on the SU budget relates to a much larger percentage increase than the district budgets, because our central office budget is only $2.3 million.
Right, but like we have fewer people, like we're gonna have a larger, like it's gonna be a per person expense that the more people you have, the bigger the expense is gonna be, it's kind of proportional, isn't it? As far as,
Well, not if health insurance is 12%.
Right.
right, but I mean, I guess
It's
not like
you're seeing the least amount of impact on health insurance as far as a percentage increase across our districts.
Because you think there's more people, right?
There's more people.
You have more people so like you have a lot of other, if I'm understanding it right, like you have a lot of other stuff in your budget other than just people. So that percentage number is lower than where the SU budget is primarily people.
Well, and also, I mean, if one or two family plans change in the SU, it's going to be a larger percentage change.
Does that make sense, Andrew? That's how I'm understanding it.
yeah, I mean, I could see the election changes, plan changes making a big difference. Like
We did have, yeah.
Okay. Anybody got other budget questions? Are we comfortable with this budget? Do we want to see changes made to it?
it does seem like a large increase, and particularly, our assessment's going up 16%, which is, going to be difficult to justify, I think, but
Yeah. I hear you.
I mean, yeah, so I offered to the board last time, I would say to you, areas, if we were to consider cuts, it would be community schools and it would be communications. I mean, the fiscal office just doesn't have extra bodies. I mean, this budget essentially supports ONDA and a 0.3 of Michaela. Special ed funds the other 0.7 of Michaela. And then it's Tara's office,
Which is 5.
and it's community schools and
Ray's team.
and communication and Ray's technology and communication team.
And then Jeb, who's our ELL.
Right, and a .4 ELL
Yeah.
position, which we need to have.
And our preschool coordinator. That's what our SU budget consists of. Because preschool intervention at the SU level is covered by title. So that's an offsetting revenue.
No, I just wanted folks to, like, those would be where we'd have to look. That's all.
Yep. Yep. My sense is that community schools were built around that concept. We're building that concept. We're making it stronger year by year by year. You need somebody to help coordinate it, lead it, and make it work. And that position reflects that. Another thing is that if we're going to succeed in building social capital, that social capital is in the community's belief in the quality of our service. And one way that we can educate and inform our constituency is through communication. So that's that's like saying, okay, I'm just going to drop the assistant physical training coach on a football team and can't afford it. Well, you got to afford it because you need to have your players healthy and resist injury. So I think it's probably a lousy analogy, but those are two kind of core concepts and skills that we need. And I think our existence going forward in a positive way depends on that social capital and the quality of our community schools. So I'd hate to see right at this point that we have to go back and reinvent that. And I think that would be unfortunate.
So for instance, for FBUD, it's $428,195. That's a pretty small percentage of our $7 million budget now, right? Yeah,
Well, we're projecting over 7 million. Because
Yeah. But so I support the budget the way it is. Yeah, the things that we're talking that we could find to cut seem pretty important to me in keeping things moving forward, but
I mean, yeah, just so folks know, like, if we were to cut the communication coordinator position and the community school coordinator from the SU, we would save $105,214. That's the last line. That's that last box. That's what we would save.
do I have other questions, other ideas? Do I have a motion to approve the budget? A motion to make changes to the budget? What do you want to do tonight, guys?
I'll move to approve the budget as written.
This is Sue, I'll second.
All right. Is there any discussion on the budget?
The motion should be to approve.
It has to say each budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we should start with the WVRSU budget. And Tara, why don't you give them the motion that
I
you
will.
need?
Yep.
We're going to get the correct motion here.
So a motion to approve the White River Valley Supervisory Union budget of $2,351,374 for fiscal year 2025-2026.
So move.
And Sue,
So
do you?
seconded, and still seconded.
Okay. All right. And now there's time for discussion on the motion. Any discussion? All right. There's Eric.
What I would say about this particular budget, the costs that I see rising in our district are not truly associated with the SU budget, and it makes it easy for me to support this budget from a financial perspective.
All right. Anybody else? All right, so I'll call the question. Do I need to do roll call?
I wouldn't.
All Okay, so I'm gonna call the question, I'm gonna do roll call, so when I say your name, yay or nay, okay?
Or abstain.
Or abstain. Alright, so we'll start with you, Dustin.
Geez, you gotta start with me. All right. Yeah, yes.
Yes.
Sue?
Yay.
Eric?
Aye.
Andrew?
Yay.
Stacy?
A.
Sylvia?
Yay.
Peggy?
Yay.
Rodney?
Aye.
Is there anybody else on?
No, that's it.
I think that's
Okay.
it.
Bill?
Yay.
Kathy's a yay, so the budget passed unanimously for that part of it. Got another one coming.
So a motion to approve the White River Valley Supervisory Union Special Education budget in the amount of $8,461,371 for the fiscal year 2025-2026.
So move.
So Bill's moving that. Do I have a second?
I'm happy to second.
All right. Is there any discussion on this budget? All right, hearing no discussion, I'll do the same thing. Dustin?
Yay.
Sue?
Yay.
Eric?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yay.
Stacy?
A.
Sylvia?
Yay.
Peggy?
Yay.
Rodney?
Aye.
Bill?
Yay.
And Kathy's a yay, so that budget passed unanimously. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all very much. Now I can update all your individual district budgets.
All right.
So next is our annual financial management questionnaire that I sent out divisional board reports last week. If there's any questions, otherwise I just need you all to give Kathy the authority to sign the form.
So do they vote on that?
They need to move it. Yeah.
So I need someone to move approving Kathy signing the financial management questionnaire.
So move.
Second.
All right. So do we have to do a roll call?
No.
Oh, so all those in favor on this one say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, hearing none, I will sign that for you, Tara.
Thank you.
All right, so we did the fiscal audit and the budget already. Is there any public comment? There's no public on. Resignations, new hires, anything we need to talk about? Future agenda items, we'll have our board series coming up. We'll keep you updated on, we are working through negotiations, and we are also gonna be working on the review for Jamie. And our next meeting is Tuesday, January 28th. And beyond that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Everybody, do I have a second? Yes. Everybody have a very Merry Christmas.
Yes.
Happy holidays.
Yes.
as well.
All right, guys, see ya.
Thank you.